Hey everyone, welcome. I think I'm live. I hope I'm live. If you don't know who I am, I'm Axel from Get Speaking English, and today we're gonna check out a lesson related to animals, but that will also address the part 3 speaking task on the B2 first and the C1 advanced exam. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming out. Or if you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, thanks so much for checking out this video. So if this is your first time, what's going to happen is we are going to go through the little lesson that I've prepared, and we are going to brainstorm lots of relevant vocabulary, useful phrases that we could use both for the exam and for just talking about this topic in general. And it's interactive, so feel free to leave your comments in the chat. I can see you over on the other monitor. So if you have any great ideas, I will pick them up, throw them into our notes, and hopefully together we'll be able to brainstorm just a lot of ways that we can talk about this topic. All right, perfect. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, I'm just gonna give a moment just to see if anybody else comes in. And I'm gonna cross my fingers that it's not gonna get too loud here. It's been a little crazy this morning. My cat was driving me really crazy. He was making a lot of noise. There's also some things going on with my roommates, so but hopefully it won't be a disturbance for us today. Yeah, so again, if this is your first time here, these lessons are aimed at preparing students for the B2 first and the C1 advanced Cambridge exams. However, a lot of the language, a lot of the phrases, the topics as well, are going to be very useful for other exams as well. So for the IELTS exam, for example, also for TOEFL, the TOEFL exam, other general English exams, or if you're just looking to get speaking English at an upper intermediate to an advanced level, all of this language is going to be really useful to you. The reason that I go through one topic every month or so is so we have a lot of time just to focus on speaking and learning about a topic in depth, because I find that, it's really easy to talk about the same things all the time. For example, make small talk and things like that. But in order for us to really reach an advanced level, become really proficient with the language, we have to get comfortable talking about things that we don't usually talk about. So that's why I've been doing this series, so we can get an in-depth look at various topics that you would know about in your native language, but maybe not necessarily know about how to talk, or that you don't necessarily know how to talk about in English. All right, perfect. Yeah, so a little overview about what we're going to do in this lesson specifically. We're going to first do a bit of a warm-up activity. We're going to look at animal habitats and how to describe those habitats. Then we're also going to be looking at a part 3 style task that is from the speaking paper, the B2 first and the C1 advanced exam. We're going to brainstorm some ideas, maybe make a few model answers, but it's more of a conversation, so we're just going to more or less brainstorm some ideas for talking about the task. And then at the end, we're going to check out some idioms related to animals. And then afterwards, as always, I will upload this video, I will upload the notes. You'll be able to find them on YouTube, and potentially also on Discord as well. I have to update that. The notes are also on YouTube as well, so we'll be able to check that out there. All right, so let's just get right into it. And again, feel free to, feel free to throw out your ideas in the chat. And like I said, we can collectively come up with some ideas together, talk about the ideas that are generated, and everything will come together. I'll add them to our notes, and at the end we'll have this fantastic document and video that we can all collectively learn from. So that's what we're gonna do here. So the first habitat we're gonna look at is a coral reef, and we're gonna describe the habitats. So we're gonna describe these habitats. We're gonna talk about, what are they like and what kind of animals might you find there. So a coral reef, obviously this is an aquatic. So coral reef, this is an aquatic habitat. Obviously, it's often, they're often situated near coastlines. So the coastline, that's where the land borders the sea, right? So the coastline, so they're in the water near the coastline. And they're typically comprised or made up of various types of coral, which are, essentially these animals that create these structures that are like hard, they're like shell-like. So various types of corals, they are comprised of, or made up of various types of coral, and, they form a very, diverse and colorful ecosystem, right? We might say. So in an ecosystem, as we learned last time, that's sort of referring to like the air, not just like the region, but also all like the plants and animals that live within a region, and how they all sort of interact with one another and support one another. Animals will eat other animals, and everything is sort of able to survive because of that. Yeah, so they definitely create a very interesting ecosystem. Right. And so, there's lots of animals that live around an ecosystem, or live around a coral reef, right? So for example, you might find schools of fish. And if we don't know what a school of fish is, that means a group of fish. So a school of fish is basically a group of fish. They live in schools. And they say, we may also find, we have one in this picture here, sea turtles. Those are pretty common, I would say. Turtles, right? You might be able to find sea turtles. Also, I don't have a picture here, but like jellyfish, maybe. Those are sort of like the the classic sort of blob-like looking thing with tentacles. These things are called tentacles. Also, octopus have tentacles as well. They have arms, right, which are also tentacles. They have 8 of them. I know I'm not doing a very good picture here, but yeah. So octopus also have tentacles. So yeah. So we may find those, or octopus or squid as well, right? So lots of variety of different animals living around these ecosystems. You see they might often, fish for example, or other animals might hide in among the coral, in among the rock bed, to be able to, hide from predators such as sharks, right? Potentially lots of sharks in around the coral reefs as well, which is great. And how about a jungle? And again, feel free to throw out your ideas if you have any ideas. What might we find in the jungle? Or actually first, how might we describe the jungle? I mean, when I think of a jungle, I think that it is hot and humid. So hot and humid. And what does it mean if something is humid? If something is humid, that means that there is a lot of humidity, or there's a lot of when water evaporates, it evaporates and it goes into the air. So there's a lot of water in the air, evaporated water. And it feels very hot and sticky. So that's what it means when it's humid. And usually, I'm going to talk about this for a second. So usually we say that it's humid when it's really hot, okay? So we say it's humid and it's hot and there's a lot of, dampness in the air. However, during the winter, we say it's damp usually. So when it's cold and wet, this is dampness. So it is damp. But when it's hot and wet, we call this humidity. So it is humid, we would say. So yeah. So during this time of the year, I have a lot of conversations with students, and they'll say it's humid when it's really cold, and it is, but we would say it's really damp, and that's what makes it really, really uncomfortable. And it becomes humid in the summer. Yeah, we might describe these habitats of having, lush, maybe lush vegetation, for example. Vegetation is just sort of a catch-all word we can use to describe the various trees and plants in an area, right? Right? Lots of trees, obviously. Ferns. Ferns are like, I don't know if you can see it, but there we can kind of see some ferns down here. They're sort of these green leafy plants that are sort of closer to the ground. Maybe I'll get a picture really quickly. There you go, like these guys. Here's a couple. So all of these are ferns. You can see there, those are ferns. And here too, we might also, there might be vines. So vines are these plants that might grow up a tree. So they kind of wrap around other types of things, and they will climb up the wall. This is not a jungle vine, but so wrap around things and climb. Here's another example. Here's another example of a vine. You can see this one is climbing up the side of this building. And so that would be a vine there. Yeah. And a couple different things that we might be able to find in a jungle. Lots of things. They're very diverse habitats, right? Lots of various plants and animals in a jungle. A couple of things that comes to mind are maybe like monkeys, right? Little primates that climb. Well, maybe not all of them climb, but let's see. Maybe also like tigers or snakes, for example. Lots of insects, such as butterflies, for example. Copious amounts of birds, right? Lots of birds, for example. When I think of a jungle, toucans come to mind. Those are big. Again, I'm gonna get a picture. There are these birds with these very big, colorful, they have these big, colorful beaks. So that is the mouth of the bird. So here's a toucan, and you can see this part here. And that is like the beak. Basically the hard part on the mouth. Definitely. In Arctic, there's also the Arctic tundra. So this is a location very, very either north or very south, right? Near the poles. And, you know, it's obviously, let's see, Arctic tundra. It's very cold, obviously, right? Very cold. And very cold and icy, right? There's little to no vegetation. So this is a phrase. There is little to no something, little to no vegetation, which means that there is very, very little vegetation because everything is obviously frozen. A lot of the land is what we would call permafrost, which means it is always frozen. So it is permanently frozen. Frost is, there's sort of I'm going to show you what frost is, actually, because frost is another type of sort of cold weather phenomenon. It's like when water lays on the outside of something, like it would be, and then it freezes. So for example, here we can see these trees are covered in frost. Yeah, so that's kind of where this word comes from. So permanent, frost, always kind of frozen, like these are. Yeah, so for permafrost, and obviously there's not a lot of vegetation there, right? So it's very hard place to live because, you know, it tends to be very vast, as in very large, and, you know, treeless, we might say, because trees can't grow above there's like a tree line, they call it, and above that they can't grow. So very, very challenging. They also have short growing seasons, we would say, because winter takes up the vast majority of the year, or rather cold weather is there for the vast majority of the year. So very short growing season. Growing season is like the period when plants can grow. My region here in Canada also has a pretty short growing growing season. We have maybe about 3 months, although it's getting longer with global warming, but we have about 3 months where we can actually plant a garden, have things grow. Otherwise, it's a bit too chilly here, so it doesn't really happen. And a couple things we might be able to find up here, maybe, you know, polar bears, right? For example, those are the large white bears, right? Maybe caribou or reindeer, better known as maybe reindeer. And these are a type of deer that herd animals that live up there. I'm gonna get a picture. So this good picture of a caribou. Here's a lovely caribou. So there we go. We have a picture of a caribou. This one has really large antlers. So those things on the head, those are the antlers. And another really quick point about here as well. So in English, you know, we have sort of irregular plural nouns, right? So deer is actually one of those. So for example, we would say one deer. One deer. There were, many deer in the garden, for example. Same here too. There were many caribou in the field, or there are lots of reindeer. I don't know, in the yard, for example. So again, here, these are also examples of irregular plural nouns when we're talking about animals. So we never say deers or reindeers or caribous. They're just all singular. So the same word for both the singular and the plural form. All right, perfect. So let's, there we go. All right. One last little quick thing to talk about. Let's talk about wetlands really quickly. And again, feel free to throw out your ideas if you have anything to say. Put it in the chat, and I will be happy to add our ideas together to my notes. But wetlands are also a very, very common habitat. And when we talk about a wetland, we essentially mean places that are where we have both ground and water. So that's a difference from, a marine or an aquatic habitat, which is like entirely underwater, although these are also count as aquatic as well. But reefs were entirely submersed underwater, whereas these wetlands, it's more like a combination of wet soil, wet land, and water. So wetlands, and a few different varieties of wetlands. We might have like lakes, for example, or ponds. Well, maybe lakes aren't exactly a wetland, but ponds for sure. Also maybe marshes or swamps. I would say that this is kind of, this one here, I would maybe describe as being a marsh, I would say. Whereas this one is a bit more like a swamp. Swamps tend to be really like hot and humid, whereas marshes are usually in a bit cooler climate. I think I'm right about that. I'm not 100% sure. But these are areas which are, either like always flooded with water or partially flooded with water during the year. Essentially. Yeah, so, and a flood, what is that? A flood means that, an area where maybe there isn't normally water becomes a place with water. So water gets in there, and then suddenly there's, a river in the middle of a road or something like that. And wetlands are, habitats, really important habitats for a variety of different animals, right? So we have lots of waterfowl. So waterfowl, we mean by like ducks, for example. Ducks and, I can't spell. Ducks and other like water, birds that like water. Like, I don't know, maybe like heron. I think heron is a waterfowl, and egrets. Not 100% sure. Definitely ducks though. Those swim. Also maybe like lots of amphibians, such as frogs and toads, for example. Turtles as well. Maybe alligators. If we are, in a very hot and a very warm climate. Also lots of insects, such as mosquitoes, which are those really, 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 really annoying bugs that bite you. Really frustrating. Anyways, yeah, so lots of different animal habitats. Let's move on now. We're going to talk about finally going to talk about the task. Our warm-up took a little bit longer than I had anticipated. So if you don't know, the part 3 on the B2 First, the C1 Advanced exam, it's going to be a collaborative task. So during the exam, you always take it with a partner. There's either one or possibly 2 other candidates. Usually, though, you only have one partner. But yeah, so there's going to be another candidate, and you have to do a task together. So during this part of the exam, what's going to happen is the examiner is going to give you a sheet of paper. It usually is going to look something like this. So there's going to be a question in the middle, and there's going to be 5 points surrounding that question. And the idea is that you and your partner, so you and the other candidate or candidates, are supposed to have a conversation about this information. And you're gonna have 2 minutes to have this conversation. So it's a very brief conversation. But you have to talk about the information presented to you on this piece of paper. And then after that, the examiner is going to ask you an additional question as well, and you will have another minute to respond to that question. So here's an example, again, related to animals, right? In this example, we have some places that are affected by human activity and a question for you to discuss. So, and they will give you some time to look at the task first. You get 15 seconds. So again, not a lot of time, but you have 15 seconds to review read the question and read the points and think about it really quickly. And then they'll ask you to have your discussion. So ideally, again, it's going to be a bit of a back and forth. One person is, ideally going to start talking about one of the points. And then, that person can ask the other person for their opinion as well. It doesn't necessarily have to look like this exactly, but there needs to be a back and forth. It has to be a conversation. We always want to be continually adding on to the conversation. So a couple things to keep in mind, of course, right? So we don't want to be repeating what people are saying here. We always want to be adding on to the conversation. So, we would acknowledge somebody's point, but then we would always want to add on to that, right? Another thing as well, it is very short. It's only 2 minutes. So it's really important for you to keep your contributions short. It's not a monologue here. And in fact, if you talk a lot and really dominate the conversation, that's actually going to bring your mark down. They want to see that you are able to participate in a conversation, but also, invite your partner to respond and comment and things like that. And they want to see that you're able to handle that kind of dialogue. So keep your contributions relatively short, and we always want to be inviting the other person to respond. Also, too, so in the chance that you maybe have a partner that talks a lot, you can interrupt them. In fact, you should interrupt them. So, learning phrases for interrupting and cutting in, and being sure that you have time to talk is really important, really valuable, and I definitely recommend learning that kind of language as well. So it's very important on this task. And again, like I said, you can ask your partner to agree, disagree. You can, say you agree with your point, with your partner's point, or you can, say that, no, it's completely wrong, I don't agree at all whatsoever. You can ask questions, things like that. Just anything you want to kind of just move the conversation along. And yeah, just keep the conversation moving. Now, one thing is there are 5 points here, but I'm just gonna stress really quickly. So the goal of this conversation is, or the goal of this task is to have a good conversation. The goal of this task is to not address every single point. So you do not have to address every single point. Sometimes I see people, they will rush and try to address every single one of the topics during the conversation. We do not have to do that. You could even spend the entire time talking about just like 1 or 2 points. That is fine. As long as you are building on the conversation, as long as you are bringing new things into the discussion, all of that is fine. So we're not here to rush. There is nothing on the, on the marking criteria that says that you have to address all of these points. Not at all. You do absolutely 100% have to talk about the topic. You have to stay on topic. You can't talk about irrelevant things, but you do not have to rush through and make sure that you're touching on every single one of these points. So that is not the point of this task. It's more just to have a nice conversation with your partner and demonstrate that you can do that. Yeah, so, and again too, on that, related to that too, we can also talk about, sub-points related to this topic as well, right? So maybe if we're talking about Arctic, well, maybe not Arctic tundra, but maybe if we're talking about wetlands here, like what kind of human activities threaten these places, maybe you talk about marshes for a little bit, and then swamps maybe, and then ponds, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we can address sort of things that are related to these points during the conversation. The idea is that we just don't want to be repetitive, right? So we always want to be moving along, addressing new things. Okay, so let's look at this task then really, really quickly. And again, feel free to throw in your ideas. So for this task we have here, right, in what ways does human activity threaten these places? And how could they be protected? And we have, again, rainforests, Arctic tundra, wetlands, coral reefs, and oceans as well. So. So let's talk about coral reefs really quickly first, maybe. So let's talk about coral reefs, yes, which are being negatively impacted by global warming, human-caused, human-created global warming, which is, due to human activity, right? The rising temperatures of the water are causing coral reefs to basically die off, right? Causing the coral to become, to die, basically. There's a sort of a word that we would use here. We would say that the reefs are bleaching. And if you bleach something, you take the color out of it, you make it white. Like you might, if you lighten your hair, you would bleach your hair, or you would bleach clothing to get stains out of it. So we might say that. Another thing too is probably overfishing. Is another activity or another human activity that would impact coral reefs, right? Because obviously, depleting fish, the fish is, disrupting maybe the balance of the ecosystem, right? And so to deplete, what does that mean? If you deplete something, means that you use it up, essentially. So you have a resource and then you use it, you deplete it. Also pollution as well, right? So, you know, there's lots of pollution, for example, runoff from, I don't know, industrial activity, for example, also oil spills, for example. So those sort of things are really impactful here, unfortunately. And let's think of a couple ways now that maybe coral reefs can be protected. So for example, maybe we could establish zones, I don't know, where, you know, fishing or development is restricted or banned, for example. So if something is restricted, we mean that it's like there are, you know, limitations. You can only do a certain amount of something and then you can't do any more. Also, if something is banned, that means that you cannot do it. Right? So those are potentially things that we could do. Maybe also too, you know, implementing regulations as well, right? To prevent overfishing. So, and again, if you implement something, that means that you set something up, you put something in place. And regulations, of course, that's going to be like those laws or rules that say what we can and cannot do. So definitely that. Yeah. And then of course too, I know we talked about global warming, right? Maybe like find ways to reduce emissions, maybe to, you know, lessen global warming. I mean, that could potentially be something. Yeah, so a couple of different ideas there. I feel like a lot of this too could also be said for, you know, oceans as well, right? So again, really similar. They are also, you know, oceans are also susceptible to global overfishing. I was gonna say overfishing. Yeah, so if something is susceptible to something, it means that it can also happen to them as well. And again, too, you know, they're also, you know, face pollution, right? Especially plastic pollution, right? That's probably like the biggest thing above everything, right? We have these large masses, you know, these, there's, you know, masses of plastic pollution are accumulating in the ocean. So if something accumulates, it kind of goes together, it collects together, and you get more and more and more. If you accumulate something, you collect something, basically. It means to collect something, so you get like more and more and more. So yeah, so we have these big, you know, plastic islands in the middle of the ocean, these accumulations of plastic. So that's a big thing. Yeah, so maybe actually one way that we could protect against plastic is maybe, you know, maybe we could find ways or find better ways of disposing. 500 rates for disposing plastics. Maybe also find ways to recycle plastics. So that could be potentially something. Also, lots of talk about reducing single-use plastic. So single-use plastic, those are examples of containers that you would use to hold something. You would use the product and then you would throw it away. So for example, bottled water, maybe, like yogurt containers, things like that. There's lots of single-use plastic in the world, and every day it gets thrown out, right? So, so looking for better reusable alternatives instead, that could definitely be something. How about rainforest? Let's talk about rainforest, so something different. So lots of human activities are impacting rainforests. For example, deforestation always often comes up. So deforestation, this refers to, usually clearing land for agriculture. So for example, you would get rid of all the trees and make a field instead, and then plant food, or maybe raise livestock instead, right? So clearing land for agriculture, to cultivate, to grow crops or raise livestock. So livestock means like, cows and other animals we eat, basically. Farm animals. I guess, animals we eat, or farm animals usually. That's what livestock gets used for. Also illegal logging, or just logging in general. Like, it doesn't even need to be illegal, right? But again, so taking the wood, which then ends up being, here a lot of logging happens. They cut down trees and then that gets sold and used for building supplies and things like that. So just removing trees so they can be used for something else, right? So logging for sure. The harvesting of timber, for example. So timber, just another way that we could refer to that material, wood. Wood typically used for building. Or other things as well. And if you harvest something, again, that means that, you have something full grown and then you pick it, and then do something with it. Yeah, mining as well, right? Probably potentially impacts rainforests, right? Because we're always looking for, we need to extract minerals and resources from the earth, right? And so that would impact potential forests or anything around there. So if you extract something, that means to take something out of something else, right? You take or remove something from something else. So we're extracting those important minerals and things like that from the earth. And of course that would also lead to habitat destruction, not just of rainforests, but of any different type of habitat, right? So some solutions, again, so going back to how could they be protected? Maybe we could implement some sustainable logging practices. So for example, maybe you could replant trees and things like that. So actually that's what happens here with the logging situation. in many parts of Canada, at least. So they will, they will harvest the lumber, they will harvest the timber, take it, and then a really common job for some young Canadians is to go out west and they will do tree planting. So you will get paid per tree. So that's like a common thing that people might do. So you could replant the trees to make sure that they're going to grow back and make an effort to do that sort of thing. We could also just establish protected areas. So, for example, create national parks, for example, or reserves, right? So these are conservation areas. So various places where we might be able to just make sure that those locations are kept safely and that humans are not going to be able to get in there and develop the land or use it for anything. Yeah, so a couple different ideas of things that we can do. I'm sure you might also have ideas too, so feel free to put some ideas in the comments, maybe after this video. That would be really fantastic. Yeah, and see what other things that we might be able to talk about under this task. All right, so I know I promised that we were going to talk about some idioms, so we're going to talk about similes today. So similes, what exactly is a simile? So a simile, I have a official definition. It's an expression that we would use to say that one thing seems very much like something else. So we use it to make a comparison, essentially. And a simile would use words such as, for example. So something is as something else, or words with like. So, and we can see this example here. The lines, she walks in beauty like the night. So obviously she isn't the night. This person is not the night. That would be crazy. But we can use a simile to say that she has a similar quality, or they're the same in some ways. So that is essentially what a simile is. And so it's really common to describe people as animals. So what we are going to do actually is we are going to match the person that I'm going to describe. We're going to match the person to the simile. So we have, for example, we can say somebody is as sly as a fox, someone is as brave as a lion, as busy as a bee, as quiet as a mouse, as stubborn as a mule, to swim like a fish, to be as free as a bird, and to eat like a pig. So I have a couple people, descriptions of people, and we're going to figure this out together. So feel free to put your answers in the chat if you think you know. So there we go. So that's the first one. All right, so our first one. So Sarah never hesitates to stand up for what she believes in. She faces all of her challenges with unwavering courage. So if she never hesitates, she never thinks twice about something. She immediately does it. If we don't hesitate, we don't stop and think, we just do it. So she never hesitates to stand up for what she believes in. So she never hesitates to fight with what she believes in. She faces all of her courage all of her challenges with unwavering courage. So she's always strong, always courageous. We might say, she is as brave as a lion, because we say that lions are also courageous, very strong. So we might say that. All right, second one. So I cherish, or I cherish my independence and freedom. So I love the fact that I can do whatever I want and I am free. So I try to live as carefree as possible. So someone who is carefree, they don't worry a lot. They just kind of go out, do things, live like nothing really matters. So I try to live as carefree as possible, not worry. Life should be an adventure. So if I cherish my independence and my freedom, maybe I am free as a bird, I might say. So somebody who's free as a bird has lots of freedom. They can do what they want. And yeah, so they have a lot of fun in life, I guess. All right, this one. So Emily is shy and reserved. So if you're a reserved person, you're the kind of person who doesn't like to you don't like to share too much, or maybe you're very careful about the things that you share with other people. So Emily is very shy and reserved. She usually prefers keeping to herself. So she prefers to not talk too much with other people. She prefers to just do her own thing, keep her thoughts private. So she prefers to keep to herself and tries to avoid drawing attention to herself. So tries to make sure that she goes unnoticed. So we might say that she is maybe as quiet as a mouse. I think that works. So yeah, so if you're as quiet as the mouse, you try to go unnoticed so that other people don't pay attention to you. And we could also just use this to describe somebody who's just not making any noise whatsoever. So yeah, so somebody quiet as a mouse, maybe shy and reserved, doesn't really talk. Somebody who doesn't really talk, maybe. Okay. Let's do this one. So stop shoving food into your mouth. So to shove is kind of like to push. So stop pushing food into your mouth. You're making a mess everywhere. So very sloppy, maybe food everywhere, total disaster. You maybe eat like a pig, we might say. So somebody who's a very, very, very messy eater, or maybe somebody who eats way too much. We might say that they eat like a pig. And this is very offensive, so don't tell people that. Don't tell other people they eat like a pig unless you are very friendly and you joke with them a lot, because otherwise it could be rather offensive. But yeah, we could say that they eat like a pig. How about this one? So, you better watch out. Jake is clever and cunning. So clever, very smart, and cunning. If you're cunning, you're not only smart, but you're able to kind of, I wouldn't say take advantage of other people. It's a little bit of sometimes that's a negative connotation. So Jake is clever and cunning, and he won't hesitate for a second if he sees opportunity to steal from you. So he will take any moment to take your things, to rob from you. So yeah, so he's very, very untrustworthy. So we might say that he is maybe as sly as a fox, maybe. So if you're sly as a fox, you're kind of really, really, again, like clever and cunning. Yeah, so we might say that. Let's do this one. There we go. So, I've never seen a better swimmer than Michael. He moves effortlessly through the water with skill and grace. So if you move effortlessly, You move very easily. You don't have to try very hard. So effortlessly, no effort, through the water with skill and grace. And grace, what does that mean? Maybe you're very like elegant and you move in a very nice way. So yeah, so a really good swimmer what might we say to describe a swimmer? We might say that he swims like a fish. We might say, yeah, so he swims like a fish, exactly, for somebody who's a very good swimmer. Also, here we go. So Alex is constantly on the move. He always has a million tasks on his plate, and he has an incredible work ethic. So if you say that you have a lot of tasks on your plate or a lot of things on your plate, we mean that you have many, many, many different responsibilities, lots of things that you have to do. So if somebody's always essentially very busy, right? If you're constantly on the move, doing lots of different things, lots of work, lots of jobs and tasks, you're probably busy as a bee. So he is as busy as a bee. So, and I forgot the verbs in all of these, didn't I? So she is as quiet as a mouse. He is as sly as a fox. I am. Got that one. She is as brave as a lion, right? They all need verbs. Alright, anyways, yeah, so he is as busy as a bee. We could say perfect. And last but not least, so despite numerous warnings from his coworkers about potential problems with his project, Mark decided to move ahead with his plan. He refused to do anything else. Yeah, so obviously there's lots of problems with his project. So he's getting lots of warnings about it from his coworkers, etc. But he doesn't want to do anything else. So if you refuse to change your mind about something, if you refuse to listen to other people about anything, you are probably, as he is, you are probably as stubborn as a mule. So if you're one of those people that refuse to listen to other people, you can't get talked out of anything, you just move ahead, do whatever you want, you are as stubborn as a mule. Alright, perfect. So there we go. All of these similes in context. So maybe you can think of other people who you can describe using these expressions as well. And there's a lot more of them too. These are only a couple, but in English, for whatever reason, we love comparing people to animals and other things as well. So similes are a very useful sort of thing to use in English. All right, perfect. So that's it for this lesson. Next week, we're going to be looking at part 4. So again, same time here on Twitch. And again, the topic is going to be animals. And then that's going to be the last in this series before I move on to a new topic. So be sure to check back about that. Oh, I have the topic right here. Yeah, so the next topic is going to be the internet. So that is going to be fun. The internet and social media. So there'll be lots of interesting things to talk about there. Yeah, although I'm trying to get a bit of a study group going, but it's been slow and really challenging. It's been hard to get people, I've had people interested, but it's but it's hard to get people to post. But studying obviously can be very, very lonely, and it's a lot better if you have support, right? So I would like to get a group together on Discord of just a number of people so we can check in, say what we are studying. Typically for English, I'm going to be doing Italian though, because obviously I already speak English. But yeah, I think it'll be good if we can connect to one another and just find some support with other students who are also studying English. So I'm thinking about there's a spot on Discord under accountability. There's a spot to check in daily, weekly as well, or even monthly. And if I get people, we can do a Sunday wrap up, which would be really great. We can go over our plans and talk about our week ahead. We could potentially even do this using the voice chat, like using the rooms, but for now I'm thinking everything text-based, but I'm open to hosting sort of a chat. Anyways, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I will try to leave a link in the description to the Discord. However, it's going to be a temporary link, so you can typically find the permanent link on Telegram. So go to Telegram if the link down below doesn't work, and you should be able to find a Discord link there. You can also just message me on Telegram, or here as well too on Twitch, I suppose, and ask for a link. Yeah, so that's under accountability, and you can be able to find it there. And again, last bit of information. Again, as always, I have lots of things going on Telegram, also on Instagram as well, so you'll be able to find groups with specific level related activities on both of those channels. And then there's also a general channel where I share daily speaking prompts, which are also really great if you're looking to have something to talk about every day. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to go now. Thanks again for watching the stream, and thanks a lot for watching this video if you check it out afterwards as well. Be sure to check out the notes. They'll be available in the description on YouTube, and yeah, I will see you all next week. All right. See you.